project 2 is a fun project. It's quite, honestly, to me, it is one of the easiest projects through the nanodegree program. And I say that just because the associated class helps students get started with writing JSON objects. And for those of you working on project 2, the JSON objects kind of relate to how they'll be defining objects for project 3. There we go. So the first section is pretty clear. Make sure you have some information, real or fake, about yourself or someone else. You have your bio, your contact info, and the project gets you started along a really good path. If you just go and read the README that's associated, it's going to help you a ton. Just with this part, it tells you exactly what you need for each of those parts. The second part of it has to do with functions, and it says all resume functions should be built with modular functions. Now, what is the big deal with modularity? Basically, the word modular itself means something that can be broken down into parts. So it separates your code into independent parts, which can be put together very easily. And a way to think about this is modular sofas. You can buy any individual pieces and just piece them together. You can have just a single sofa and then add on a double one to it, depending on how long your living room is, I guess, in your style. Obviously.
And that's very important, right?
It can also help when there are multiple people working on the same project and each person can work on parts of it and you can put them together afterwards. So each member would flesh out a module, and when they work perfectly, by that you would also be checking on small snippets of code to work the right way. And once that happens, you can just assemble them together in one project. Now, it can also help extend things. So say right now I have a function or code that only does things A, B, and C. I can add modules to it so that it can do C, D, and E. And in case of the interactive resume, maybe you just want to start with one thing, say your bio, and make sure that works perfectly fine, and then come back and add a little bit of module for your work and then your projects. So you can keep extending it in a really easy way.
And that really helps debugging as well, because you don't want to write all your code just to see a blank page on your Chrome browser window. You open it up and you don't know what is going on, where you made the error. So it's very convenient if you want to build up part by part, module by module. So you want to build up your bio section first, see if it renders, and then go ahead with the rest of the sections.
Just go piece by piece. And I guess with that, although we cover this in the class, I would like to just show our students how to go and define functions and talk about the difference between function expression and function declaration. And let's just make sure that we actually go into Sublime and tell Sublime that this is a JavaScript file.
Yay.
Now, something that I am missing here is a semicolon. This is called a function expression, and it must come with a semicolon at the end of the curly braces. It's really important. With styling, and styling your code in a certain way is really important to work with the industry and just work at industry standards. There's another way to define a function, and we can just call it this way, and the code associated would go over there. However, in this case, since it is a function declaration, it should not have a semicolon at the end of it. That is an extra semicolon. You don't need it. So as quickly to remember, if there is a var associated with your function, it must have a semicolon. If you don't have a var in the declaration of your, or when you're beginning to write your function, you do not need to have a semicolon in the end. And then the way we would call each of these functions is just by writing this function and this function too. Again, my semicolons are missing.
I just nudged Gauri.
Yep. So that's the way you would define a function. So make sure you understand the difference between what a function declaration versus a function expression is. The expression comes with var, var associated with it. The declaration doesn't. Mm-hmm. And when you have var associated with a function, have a semicolon, otherwise don't. It's an extra semicolon. And in your code reviews, you will get pointed out on that little semicolon. Yeah. For sure. Just the way, what does encapsulating something means? To covering it up into separate objects. So hold inside or keep data pertaining to a particular object with it. So, and it also helps with modularity. So you don't have a function defined there and then it's associated if you are adding on to it, the function that you're adding on in some other place. So it helps with unspaghettifying your code, if that word even exists.
we can maybe show them like a quick example of how to write a basic structure of encapsulation. So basically what you're doing is you're just wrapping your data and your functions together within an object, right? So this object is going to be able to access all the data as well as access the member functions. So I can type up something real quick in Sublime.
Good. Let's go share your screen, Purnima.
Great. So I'm screen sharing, and right now I'm just going to say I'm going to give a JSON object named person, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a name attribute. Oops, I guess I forgot my parentheses. So I have a name property, and then I assign Purnima to it. And then
do you want a comma, Purnima?
Yeah, but I'm just entering one field.
Oh, this one. Okay.
Yeah, and then what I do is I have a person dot display function defined here. Oops. 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 Okay. And then what I'm going to do here is just say console dot log of person dot name. So semicolon. And now how I can access. So as you can see, this person object has a name attribute, and that has my name assigned to it, and it has a display function. So to call this function, all I have to do is say person.display.
Hang on.
Okay. So I just showed you how to encapsulate a function and its attribute within an object, and how to call the object and access these functions and the attributes. So that's what I did here, and you can extend this. Like Ari said, I can add a role to this and say you're a coach. Yeah, and I can add.
I guess let's show
organization.
Okay.
And then
Udacity.
Udacity.
So defining your procedure, your function outside of the object and using dot notation. The dot kind of is like an apostrophe in the English language. So it's basically saying person's display function is going to console.log person.name. Now there's another way by defining the display function. Let's call it something else inside the object itself. And to do that, okay, I guess you all are seeing
the
screen. Thank you. I'm just going to go ahead and keep deleting your your responses as questions. I guess we can go ahead and Purnima, can you define the function inside the person object? So the way we would do that is just have a function, and let's call it function 2 or something. You are missing a comma.
Okay.
And then function name.
Function 2, and then colon.
And it would be the function. Now you're telling it that this property is actually a function, and you have curly braces, and your code, and this time it might be console.log, the person's role or something. And then the way to actually call this function is very similar to the display one, and you would still go person dot
function,
and it will pull it up for me.
This is convenient.
Function 2. Yes. That's the way you would be calling that function. So that basically is encapsulation. To meet specifications, you definitely want to have your Google map that renders, and the code for it is given to you in your helper.js. So you need to go and uncomment that code, and it should take the place or location associated with where you live or where you've worked or where you got your education from and help you display it on the map. That is the basic interactivity we do expect to see to meet specifications. Beyond that, you can add menu bars or navigation bars, some sort of a skills chart. That is the one I've seen and enjoyed a lot.
I think that is called, the navigation bars are a part of Polymer. So you can check that out. And definitely for exceeding specifications in that area, I've seen like some of them just like provide links to their contacts. So wherever you provide contacts and where you have your LinkedIn handle or your Twitter handle mentioned there, what you can do is you can add a hyperlink that will actually take you to take anyone who's looking at your resume to the place, to your Twitter account or your LinkedIn page or however. So you can do that. That is also definitely
something that I have seen and enjoyed a lot, and it had to do with going and modifying the styling as well, was when I hovered over a certain skill or contact, it would change the color. Or there was one where it would jump, and that I thought was particularly helpful with the nano degree because you do have to do something of that sort in your Project 5. And while you all are quite far away from that right now, it is something to consider. So we love seeing projects that exceed specifications, and so we encourage you to work on that.
And the next part, also the artistic creativity. That if you exceeds in that, you get an overall exceeds in your project. So make sure that, sometimes students overlook that they have to, go above and beyond in both the sections to actually exceed specifications in the project. So yeah, do you want to talk about the artistic creativity?
Sure. So the artistic creativity is basically got to do with your layout in your CSS. And we want you to have fun with the project. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to completely change the project. We do love to see those projects, but the basic expectation is that you change your font, you change the layout, and we'll show you
font and colors.
I
think right now it's a shade of gray and orange that you use. So yeah, go ahead. You can alter colors and change the layout of the page entirely.